So all temples have their specific characters. So in that temple at that particular phase, the Kartikeya, I think his name is Murugan in South. He didn't want to. Uh, he was under penance and he had vow of celibacy. So he had the deity had no wish to see women when he was in stage of penance. So in other temples, he's allowed. Women are allowed, but not in this particular temple. So should government consider it misogyny
So,
and not allow women?
so basically, the thing is that every temple has its story, and in the story of this temple is that the Lord, who is presented in this form, is not supposed to see any of the women who are like in between 20 and 50, and so that's why the temple like maintains the tradition of not allowing women of that particular age into the temple. And there are many temples in which like men are not allowed, and many temples in which both are allowed. So that is the case we are
What?
talking
Which
about.
god is this? Which god is this in Hinduism? What's his
I
name?
He's
think it's
son
Shiva,
of Shiva.
son of Shiva in this. Like he has a different name in South.
And he has taken a vow of celibacy, right? And
He
to
took a
help
vow of
him.
celibacy for some time,
Okay, but
and
he's
that
but
form is
because of
represented.
this, he's extra horny, so he's not supposed to see women. He might, like, because of his celibacy, we're trying to help. It's kind of like fasting in Ramadan, right? When you're fasting in Ramadan, you're not supposed to eat in front of people who are eating, who are fasting. So this god is like fasting from sex, so you're not supposed to tempt him by having all these girls, sexy women showing up in his temple. Is like really difficult,
Yes, but there
right?
is also a story that the women might get tempted on seeing the, what is it called? Seeing the idol or something like
Wait,
idol or
what? The
like,
woman would get tempted. The woman would get tempted when they visit the temple.
yes, there are like both are like there are people who say both types of things. There are some people
Wait,
who say
what
what
would
you say,
what would women get tempted over?
like the idol, because the idol is like the
Oh,
so like the representation of the deity, na deity, right?
But you're missing the point.
He's
Should
he's a like a
government get
warrior
to?
deity. Like
Yeah,
the
okay.
his name
deity
is
is a warrior
Ayappa.
deity, and people might get tempted.
How would women not get tempted looking at the Shiva lingam, but they get tempted over this god, but not over Shiva?
But religion is not logical, na.
Oh, okay, yeah, sure.
So do they get to change the character of temple? And it's not even misogynistic in that sense. It's like
Yes.
forcing women upon gay people in a
Like there's
Forcing
case.
also
women, forcing women upon gay people. Is that what you just said?
Yeah,
What does
yeah.
that mean?
So like uh, like government forcing uh, gay women on homosexual men.
What has this got
Isn't
to do
it?
with women? What is the temple
No,
gay?
no, but then if they are saying that they are for gender equality, then and God should be revered by women and men both. So the other point is, but God doesn't want to be revered by women at this point of time.
Okay, but the
So
god is not real. So I don't think, like, you're trying to protect the right of the god, trying to say like the god has the right not to see women. Is that who you're trying to protect?
yeah, so deity can be personified
Okay, but I
the
don't think
deity.
government is.
because
I don't think government.
they are claiming gender equality now. So because God
I
should be
know, but
equally
I don't
accessible to
think.
men and women.
I think the governments are supposed to represent people, not gods.
Yes, but if the people want women not to go into the temple, then how could you force women to go? Like, how could you force the administration of the temple to allow women into in it?
Well, because okay, like, aren't temples government funded?
And
They
the
are
government
controlled by
takes
government.
money. The government
Okay,
takes
so
money from the temple.
but they're considered government property, right?
Yes, only the
Yeah,
temples.
Okay, so therefore that means that the government, you cannot have gender segregation on any government property. Okay, and what people, this, in democracies there are limitations to democracy, right? Like, even if the majority wants something, if anything, violence violates gender equality or the rights of the minority, the majority cannot dictate. Like, it's not the dictatorship but by the majority. There are certain limitations that the majority cannot decide, especially if it's not a private property. If this is a public property, you cannot have discrimination against any group of people, including women. So
Yes,
it makes sense, actually. So I support the court in India saying that women should
but
be allowed.
the government has this committee set up for the temple, and the committee said that no, we cannot allow this. And even like the local court said that we cannot allow this, and like the local people also say that we cannot allow this. And the government like can do things like we have a men's gym and we have a like a women's gym. So why can't they do this for the for the temples? It is
Well,
illegal.
does the temple have a women's section?
No,
Okay, so
but
there's a difference. It's not like
uh,
a temple had a men's section and a women's section. The temple had no women's section. The women were not allowed.
but
But
they
there
do have
are
a
temples
section
where
in the
men
temple.
aren't allowed.
Okay,
Like
but
the same.
by the way, the gym is not, the gym is different. Okay, because the gym is somewhere where you go change. First of all, I'm actually against. A gym is a private company, right? I don't think gyms are owned by governments, right?
But what if they
But
are like in a country like India?
yeah, I don't think it makes sense to have gyms that are only for men or only for women. Why would you need that?
But should it be allowed?
I think it should be allowed if it's private owned. It shouldn't be allowed if it's government owned.
Should there
Okay.
be different toilets for men and women?
Yeah, I
Should
mean,
there
you're
be
not
maternity leave in name of gender equality? Do you think there's something called reasonable classification? Or are you in favor of radical gender equality?
okay. So I think at this point in time, we can't have it makes sense because when people have not been introduced to like removing all gender barriers, it makes sense for washrooms to be separate. But eventually, I think we could get to a place where everybody's comfortable. Like, different genders are not that significant anymore. You know what I mean? That's an ideal goal that we could get to. But washrooms are different from a temple, right? Like, that's where that's a more private.
No, but
Like
it's
social.
about the character of the place.
Yes, because there's an island in Japan which is like men's only, and it got the UNESCO certification, UNESCO World Heritage Site certification.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
I am. If we're moving in the direction of removing gender segregation, I support that. I think that's progress. Even in washrooms, if you're like, hey, we have unisex washrooms. Like, I saw that some countries were introducing unisex washrooms. I was like, hey, this seems progressive. We're moving in the right direction.
Okay, but so will this not push for like what if the Hindus decide that we want to get our temples back from the government and we will have the temples in the hands of Hindus? Will it be allowed then? Like, should it be allowed then?
So it would, like, what if, like, would you support a restaurant? Okay, so first of all, if it's government owned, then definitely it should not. There should be no gender segregation. Okay, if it's privately owned, I think one gender is considered so victimized gender, and the other one is not, right? So, for example, you can have like this is how it is, but I'm not saying if it's correct or not, right? Like, for example, in more progressive countries, you can have all female gyms, but you cannot have all male gyms, right? I don't think that's fair, but that's what the standard is, for example, right? And if it's private, I think you should be able to do more than if it's government owned, because if it's government owned, then it should be for all people. But if it's private, I think if women are an oppressed class in the country, then it should still be illegal to do that, right? So, for example, in the United States, a private restaurant cannot say we do not allow Black people to eat here. Okay, even if it's private, that's illegal. That's discrimination against Black people, right? You cannot have a restaurant that says like we do not serve Jews here. Like, you cannot do that, right? So
Yes.
if women fit that category, right, then you cannot say like we do not serve women here, right? A temple cannot say we do not serve women here. Just like in the same way that a restaurant cannot say we do not serve Black people here, a temple should not be able to say we do not serve women here.
so in case
But
of temple, it's not about people serving the God serving the people. It's about people serving the God. Do you think there's
But
character to a specific place that government should consider?
we, no, listen, like we cannot make religion like the government. If government has a law says like we cannot, you do not. If you don't have, if you can't have a restaurant that says we do not serve women in this restaurant, okay, then you should not make. Then you shouldn't have religious privilege. You should not like be like, oh, all businesses cannot have like don't have this rule except if you're a religion. You know what I mean? Like you could basically you have loopholes for laws um because of your religious excuse, like the government is recognizing the authority of a certain religion by doing that, right? Like in India, for example, can you have a restaurant that says like we do not serve women in this restaurant, only men can eat at this restaurant? Can you do that?
I think so. Yes, there are no
I
laws
think you
against it.
can. There's no problem with that.
Well, they shouldn't. Okay, they shouldn't allow that. That's discrimination. And if I think if you can't allow that, you should do the same thing with a temple. Like you can't be like, oh, we have access to higher like some magic, so we get to have standards that other people that don't have access to magic, you know.
Do you
Yes,
think then government can turn mosques into temples and temples into mosques? Because if Hindus claim that this is government-owned temple or Muslims claim that this is government-owned land, we need access to have azan in temple. Should it be allowed?
Should answer. Well, I mean, this is a good case for. So, for example, a temple cannot say we do not allow Muslims here, okay? And a mosque should not be able to say we don't allow Hindus here, okay? If they're government owned, right? So this is like very challenging and questionable. Like, and eventually, if your temple is managed by Muslims, can they start playing azan in your temple? So that's gonna be, yeah, that's interesting. But another interesting, actually, Mario, you ask a very interesting question. Another interesting question is, um, are mosques in India government owned, or
Only
is it just
few, like one or two mosques.
okay? So in those mosques, do men pray in front of the women?
no.
No, generally women aren't allowed inside mosque, or there's segregation between the two.
Okay, so if you want to really, if you want to really go at the government, you have to go like, okay, so these mosques should also be not segregated. Like, why are
Yes,
you like, yeah,
I
okay.
think
I
they brought in gender equality thing in one mosque. I think it's not even mosque, it's shrine of some Sufi saint.
I don't have problems with like the government pushing for like, even if they push for extreme liberal values, I don't have a problem with that. But the thing is, they are very selective in this. They don't ask the Muslims or the Christians to like follow things which are like liberal things, and they always go behind the Hindus that you have to improve, you have to improve, you have to improve, and they are like, oh, let the Muslims do whatever they want, let the Sikhs
But
do whatever they want.
government doesn't own churches or mosques in India in any direct fashion, like they own
That's
temples.
true too.
If you'd like to send me your questions for me to answer during our Q&As, become a patron. If you would like to have a discussion with me live on air at the end of the Q&As, become a YouTube member. Link to both is in the description. Thank you for your support.